Three new players that the Browns could be interested in when it comes to the NFL draft, as well as the strongest and weakest position group on this Browns team as it stands right now. We got a lot of show coming up, so let's get right to it on the Sick Podcast with Andy McNamara.
Turn up your volume. Because you're about to listen to The Sick Podcast with Andy McNamara, the sickest Cleveland Browns podcast.
In the backfield, Latavius Murray. Huntley takes the shotgun snap. Back to pass. Looks. The ball got stripped away. In the air. The Browns fight for the ball. And it's picked up by Myles Garrett. He's going to score. Touchdown.
It's going to be sick.
Hello, everybody. How's everybody doing, Browns fans? How you doing? Feeling good? Feeling good? I'm feeling good. I'm Andy McNamara. Make sure you're clicking subscribe, notifications on, so you don't miss any of the great Browns content that we have right here on the Sick Media Network. And draft season is so close. I love it. You know I love it. I know you love it too, because it's the time of hope right now. Again, the Browns don't have a first-round pick. So what do? Well, at 54th overall, we have to start digging a little bit. And I've gone through a few of my favorites on the wide receiver side, a couple of tackles here and there, but a lot of focus on the offensive side of the ball from my mindset. I'm thinking even with the addition of Jerry Jeudy, Amari Cooper, one injury, something goes sideways, and that receiver room might not look as hot as we'd like. So my focus has been wide receiver. We're going to get a different view in just a couple of moments. But make sure you're following us on social media at SickPodBrowns on Twitter, X at AndyMC81, on Instagram and TikTok at AndyMCSports. Let me know in the comment section too. What position do you want the Browns to draft at 54? And is there a player? So tough to predict, right? At 54, who knows? It could be a run of any position, and then you fall to 54 and it's something weird, right? Like a few years ago, Andrew Berry traded up to get JOK. He couldn't believe he was there. A couple of years ago was Martin Emerson, right? Traded the second round pick, went down to the third, got Martin Emerson. Well, with quarterback, then you trade Troy Hill. It makes sense, and Emerson's a great pick. Where do you want the Browns to go? Let me know. And also, what is the strongest and weakest position group in your mind for this Cleveland Browns team right now? Let us know in the comments and on all social media. But let's bring in my guy, friend of show. Let's bring him back. Lance Reisland, high school coach in Ohio, in the Cleveland area. Done that for a long time and is a special contributor to Cleveland.com. We love having him on to break down the films, the prospects, really dive in, sink our teeth into this thing. Lance, how are you, buddy?
I'm doing well, Andy. How are you, buddy?
Oh, man, I'm good. We know it's draft season. You love analyzing the tape. I love analyzing it too, and just looking at some different possibilities. Because as we know, it's like at 54 for the Browns, anything's possible, right?
Well, I think, listening to you earlier, here's the thing. I think what the Browns have done in free agency, and, you threw out a lot of different positions, both offensively and defensively. I think what the Browns have done is they have allowed themselves to pick whoever they value most. So there's no real big holes. And if you look through the draft over the years, which I'm more of a film guy and I am learning the draft, but they don't have a position of need per se. Mm-hmm. Now they can take a position of value, and they could take whoever they feel is the best. And it doesn't matter if the position is loaded. It doesn't matter if the position is has veterans at it. That's how you create competition. So I think the Browns, I've looked at both sides of the ball. I'm an offensive coordinator at heart, but I still believe defense wins championships. And now they can take guys who have tremendous value and also fit their scheme. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah, it's a great point. Because of the work Andrew Berry did in free agency and trading, acquiring Jerry Jeudy, it now has put them in a spot where they're not predictable. Whereas I would say, let's say a team like the Buffalo Bills trade Stephon Diggs now. Well, the Bills think you got to take a wide receiver, right? Everybody knows that game plan. Now for the Browns, you've brought the players back on defense. You've added a Jefferson on the line. So you're right. You have a situation where if there's a player, if there's that, like I think a great example is that Martin Emerson from a couple of years ago, where it's like, why would you take a corner? And now it's like, oh, wow, that guy's really good. And they were able to do that.
There's no question. So you get to take whoever, you pay those guys really good money to evaluate, those scouts really good money to evaluate. So now you're saying, regardless of what's on the board, you're saying this is the best guy that we have valued at all positions. And that's how you create competition. And you said it best. Martin Emerson's was a pick when they made it. They're like, why would you draft a corner? Well, there's never enough corners, right? There's never enough defensive linemen. There's never enough. These guys, there's injuries. you have to be good 2, 3, even sometimes 4 deep, as the Browns showed this year. And you have to be good 1 through 53. And I think the Browns, are allowing themselves to say, if this guy, so somebody said to me, well, why would they take a defensive lineman? They have 10. Well, if they take a defensive lineman and he's really good, now you have trade bait. Now you have draft capital. You have things like that. So there's different ways to look at it. But I think they go out and get the best guy, whoever they think is the best guy.
Well, let's talk about some of who you think could be the best guy. I've in recent shows have gone over on the wide receiver group. So I was glad that you were focused all on the defensive side of the ball. And let's begin with this guy, T'Vondre Sweat. Defensive tackle, Lance, 6'4", 366 out of Texas. Let's go. I want the big boys up the middle.
Well, you can never do enough. Football to this day, it's changed over the years, but you win up front, both sides of the ball, offensive, defensive line. So T'Vondre Sweat is a guy. I know they re-signed Hurst and they got Quentin Jefferson, but this is a guy with great movement skills. He's got an 81 plus extension in his arms, wingspan. He knocked down 15 balls in college. What I like is his movement skills. So he's 306 pounds, but he can move. So when you think about the scheme fit for Schwartz, he's a guy that can get in a gap, especially on third down, especially on situational stuff, goal line, third and short, as he's learning the game, because, young guys have to learn the game, especially inside, but he's a guy that gives you tremendous value with his size. Now he's had some off the field stuff. I don't concern myself with that in terms of, he's a young kid. I think he'll learn from that. But what I see on film is a guy who has elite movement skills for a guy who's 366 pounds. So what I see is a guy that get down to 330 and a guy who now has the ability to play inside and outside. This is a guy on film. You see him cross the face of centers. You see him get in his pass rush stuff. This is a guy with basketball type skills at 366. So I really like this guy. I think he's tremendous. I think he's got a great upside. I think he'd be, some people would be shocked. I would not be shocked if the Browns went with Sweat at 54.
Well, and it's a situation too, Lance, where the Browns are stacked at defensive line, but several of those guys are on one-year deals, right? You have to replenish and you have to get these players, especially with the Deshaun Watson cap situation always looming. You have to get starters on those rookie contracts. It's so important. So that makes a lot of sense to me, where if you're able to get somebody in. Shane, let's bring the example video up here of T'Vondre Sweat. He's not. Is he related to Montez Sweat? Do you know?
I don't believe so.
Both are big boy linemen. I was like, oh man.
So okay, you're gonna see him. You're gonna see him here at the 3 technique to the left of the center, and you're gonna see him. You're gonna see him with a great pass rush. So you're gonna see him attack at center. You're gonna see him. He's got violent hands. He does a quick over. Some people call it swim. I just call it an arm over because he's not committed to his chest. It's just a quick arm over. He's got great hands. He's got great feet. I like to say he's got great feet in a small area. And that's really, as a defensive lineman, you need to have explosive feet in a small area. He's 366 pounds. He ran a 5.0540, which to me is more impressive than Xavier Werber's 4.21, because you're talking about a guy 366 pounds. So the immense skill, the ability to move his feet in a small area, the violent hands, the pretty advanced pass rush plan that he has already. He's a guy, when you talk about, again, all the guys we're talking about are guys that they don't have to come in and be stars. They need to be they need to be situational guys who can learn from guys in front of them, but with tremendous upsides. And I don't care what position it is. A guy like Sweat, who is a guy who's, I think, can be a 10-year pro. There's a guy you got to look at if he's available at 54.
No, it's a terrific point. You can ease him in with that, with where the Browns are picking and the stars they have on the front. And it's more important than ever, Lance. I want to get your thoughts on this. I think it's more important than ever to have that interior pass rush, that penetration up the middle, because as we know, we see all these mobile quarterbacks, Lamar Jackson in our own division. You can get the edge, but guess what? By the time you're getting around the edge, Myles Garrett's getting there, he might be up the middle. Well, if you can get a Quentin Jefferson, a Sweat here brought in with Tomlinson, and plug it, now all of a sudden you can't go up the middle and oops, we got Zadarius Smith and Myles Garrett ready to eat you up.
Well, yeah, and pressure in A and B gap is a quarterback killer. Pressure along the edge, that doesn't bother you too much as a quarterback. What bothers you is your line of sight. So when those big guys, not only are they guys who rush, but they're guys who are well coached, so they get their hands up. So not only sometimes they don't create a big rush in terms of getting on the edge, but they push the pocket vertically, they displace it backwards. And when you displace it backward, get your hands up, that's a pain in the butt for a quarterback. So yeah, those guys can do that. And then they have the guys on the edge. They have second level guys that can run. I just think that you keep adding to defense. You saw last year, you can have a bunch of different quarterbacks. You can have a bunch of injuries, but if you can play defense, you can always win games.
Yeah, keeps you in the game. Absolutely. All right, let's move on to your next Browns possible pick at 54 in the second round. And this was a surprising one because to me, and we'll talk a little bit more about this later, is arguably the deepest position group. Safety, Tyler Nubin, 6'1", 199 out of Minnesota. Again, I love the size.
Well, you got McLeod, who has made it very clear that this is probably his last year. You got Thornhill, who's getting up there a little bit. You got Delpit. You got guys that can play. But once again, when you talk about a Jim Schwartz defense, you need to be, as a safety, you need to be able to play down to the line of scrimmage and the one high hat. Very few guys can do both, and that's a very, very tough skill set. Nubin's a guy who's played down in the box for Coach Fleck at Minnesota, and he's a guy who's played deep. And those guys who can do both are so tough to find. And in this defense, it's not really linebacker. It's second level. So those second level guys need to be able to have run gap responsibilities. They need to cover multiple guys. They need to be able to play zone defense. They need to be able to rally up and make tackles. They need to be able to tackle in space. They need to be able to blitz off the edge. They need to be able to blitz interiorly. So the safety position is so complex for Jim Schwartz, and very few guys that can get guys that can do it. Thornhill's a guy who's been really successful deep. Delpit's a great guy down in the box. I see Nubin, and once again, I think he's the best free safety in the draft. So if here's a guy with tremendous value that you don't need, but as a guy who now can create competition, some people have been upset because they're like, enlighten me, that's our deepest position. I think it's one of our deepest positions, but again, a guy that's too talented not to take a look at. Doesn't mean you have to get him, but you better take a look at this guy. He's really an elite player.
Let's bring up that clip here, Shane, and take a look at Mr. Nubin.
Well, here he is. Here he is playing the free safety. So once again, he's reading the eyes. So this is a classic one high safety. Minnesota's bringing a 6 or 7 man pressure here with one free safety. You're going to see him. He reads the eyes of the quarterback. He jumps on the ball. He's got great body awareness. He's got spatial body control. Great spatial awareness. He's got great ball skills when the ball's in the air. He catches it at his highest point. And then when you get him down the line of scrimmage, he plays like a linebacker. I'd say the one thing against him is that can he stay healthy? Because he's a guy, he's 200 pounds. And he flies around. He plays with his hair on fire. So he's just a guy who I think, again, he's the best safety in the draft, in my opinion, in terms of being able to do both things. And you cannot pass great guys because you have depth. You have to continue to create depth, especially if they're a guy that's high on your board. You saw that with Emerson. You saw that in the past, and the Browns will do that.
Yeah, well, the Emerson example in the secondary. So that is a real possibility that Andrew Berry has shown he won't shy away from. And with the McLeod situation, he got hurt at the end of last year. And if he's going to retire, well, that depth can get real thin quick, right? So that Nubin, and that is how Schwartz likes to play. Plus, you got Ronnie Hickman, who I adore, and D'Anthony Bell as that rotation. So now you got a young guy who, again, you don't have to force him too much, but you can make a playmaker. And look, if he's got eyes for the ball and he's a ball hawk, you cannot, in the pass-heavy NFL, you cannot have too many ball hawks, right?
Well, and one thing that no one is mentioning right now that is going to be huge this year, this kickoff return that's now in the NFL, you need guys who can cover and block. This is now going to be an offensive play. You're going to see some offensive car, McVay, one of these innovative guys, is going to take their big-time returners because the collision is now gone. It's all contact. So now it becomes an offensive play. So you need guys that can cover and guys that can block in space. And these guys, these Nubin guys, these athletes, they can do that. So that kickoff return now becomes a huge play for your offense, and being able to cover becomes huge for your defense. So you want some elite guys who are covering now to make sure that offense doesn't get a short field. Yeah,
good point. In conversation with Lance Reisland from Cleveland.com, a longtime high school football coach in the Cleveland area. Number 3 for Browns target at 54 in this NFL draft, linebacker Peyton Wilson. And Lance, you same mind here, man. I love the size and the speed. 6'4", 233 out of NC State. Let's go. Tell me about it.
Well, he's a guy who has incredible physical attributes, right? So he went to the combine. He ran a sub 4.5. He's 6'3". He's 6'4". He's 230. He had 138 tackles, multiple sacks, multiple tackles for a loss. His big thing is that he's 24 years old, and everybody, Andrew Berry has been known not to take older guys, and he had a couple knee injuries early in his career. He has not been injured the last 2 years. I will tell you that this is my absolute favorite film breakdown of the year so far, and I'm hundreds in, and this guy is an absolute killer as a defense. He is showing the ability to play off the edge. He can cover. He can play the true middle linebacker. He's blitzed off the edge. He's played the edge as a defensive end in nickel situations. He covers, like I said, multiple with that speed. He can cover slot receivers if necessary. He's got great fluid hips. He's nasty. He is absolutely relentless in everything he does. He's a guy that, for me, he would be my 54 pick if he's around. And those injuries, I think, will push him down, and the depth at receiver. But here's a guy, without question, I think, last year my favorite guy was Ivan Pace for the same reasons. He's just absolutely relentless. Ivan Pace had a pretty good year. I think this guy is going to be a star in the NFL. I don't care how old he is. The film doesn't lie. This guy on film is an absolute destroyer.
Well, Lance, it sounds like he has similar, in some degrees, attributes to a JOK. The difference is JOK, and credit to him, he put on some muscle last year to bulk up and help avoid the injuries. This guy looks already bulked up. He doesn't need any more.
Well, they went out and got Jordan Hicks, and they got Bush, and so they got some guys who are in the 230 range. But in terms of long term, you're right. JOK it needs to stay away from that Mike backer unless it's a stunt. But you're trying to keep JOK off those double teams and those big guards and centers and tackles getting off on him. JOK in space and being able to do different things is really, really special. Unfortunately, with injury last year, JOK is an elite guy. And you're right. This is the kind of athletic ability that I compare him to, that JOK athletic ability where, if you watch him in the ACC against Clemson and Florida State, this is a guy who's absolutely dynamic on film and everything he does. And next to JOK, now you got the defensive line, which I think is the strongest. You have this fantastic linebacker crew, second level crew that can run, and then guys who can play in man. You've made a really, really dynamic defense even better, in my opinion.
Let's bring that clip up, if you can, Shane. Let's see the guy in action.
Well, you're going to see him coming off the edge here. He's starting at Mike backer, and he's just a guy who's relentless. And again, you're going to see him blitzing from the middle of Mike linebacker position. He's going to come all the way off the right edge, the defensive right edge, and he's going to track down this quarterback by sheer want to. And you can see that 4.5, sub 4.5 speed. And it's everything he does. So he blitzes for multiple positions. Like I said, he covers multiple positions. He's a leader of their team. He plays with a great motor. He plays with great passion. I still think that linebacker needs a vocal guy. JOK is a great player, but he's more of a performance-based guy, which is what you need those two. But you need a vocal guy. This guy is vocal. He's everything you can want in a linebacker: size, speed, relentlessness. Love Peyton Willis.
Ah, boy. Lance, I think you got me falling in love with this guy, man. Holy cow. I really like how he looks. Now, my concern is, I'm with you. I take him. And if you look at Devin Bush, I sort of see him as the talkie-talkie special teams replacement. Now, credit to talkie-talkie. He grew into being able to be a borderline starter and a nice contributor. But if we think of Devin Bush as the special teams guy who can fill in at times with some upside after the rookie year, never got it back in Pittsburgh, some potential. You got Hicks, who's older, always a bit of an injury risk there. Even though they usually only play the two linebackers and are more heavy up front, that looks like that, again, you can ease him in. And with that type of talent, that would be a gorgeous pick at 54.
Well, you have lots of flexibility. So all those guys you said, those are guys who all have flexibility. So defensive linemen, Schwartz likes guys who can play the D end and a D tackle. He likes to move his D end, likes to move those D ends in nickel. Those second level guys. Now you're talking with a Peyton Wilson. He can play the Mike Samuel. He can play that outside backer. We used to call it the Leo, that guy in space because there's only two backers in there. He can play all three of those. So now you got a guy who can back up multiple positions. You can also put him at the defensive end in a nickel look. He's 240 pounds. So it doesn't mean he has to do it, but he's a guy, put him in the right situation, get him in matchups where maybe you have Myles Garrett or somebody who is also a pass rusher where the focus is going to be inside to his side. He's just a guy with a ton of versatility and a guy who can do a bunch of things. And that's so important in Jim Schwartz's defense. That's what causes havoc, is the matchups. Finding those matchups is what Jim Schwartz does. And you win with people. You don't win with scheme. You win with people. Yeah. And Schwartz has proven that.
Lance, I kind of want Peyton Wilson now.
Yeah, I'm not backing out.
I don't want Peyton Wilson now. I'm going to be disappointed. I know.
Well, the age thing is going to be is always a concern, but they want to. They did that last year with a couple guys. I just think if you watch the film, if you like football film, go toss in Peyton. You don't even have to go. Highlights are incredible. Just put in a full game, because I like to watch full games of those linebackers. Mm-hmm. And every play, there's no plays off. It's motor, endless motor, play in and play out.
And you know what? We have seen, well, traditionally, I agree, Andrew Berry has shied away from older players. We have seen him evolve in several ways as a general manager, cutting his own draft picks, also signing older free agents. Look at the free agency sign, right? You got Hicks, who's older. You have some more mature veteran guys, and maybe that won't dissuade him. Who knows how he's going to be when he's there? But those are three defensive players where I wasn't really focusing on, because my mind, again, was mainly on the receiver end to kind of grow and hopefully get a star on that rookie deal for a Cooper or Judy or Elijah Moore's contract's going to be up. So that's another way to look at it on that defensive front.
Yeah, and I like all those guys too. And the thing you just said about Barry adjusting is that, he has done a great job of filling voids and all this kind of stuff. The Browns are in the wind. There's a very small window in the NFL to be really, really good. And the Browns are in that window. So the guardrails are kind of, in my opinion, are things you do when you're building a program, whether it's high school, college, or pro. The Browns have built this program. They're in a win now situation. You can't tell me the Browns don't expect to make a big run next year. And if they're expected to make a big run, you find guys that can contribute right now. I always, as a Cleveland fan, I always use the Cavs. The Cavs went all in with LeBron, and it cost them some years, but there's a very small window, and there's very few teams that can win year in and year out. And I think the Browns are all in right now. And if that means, taking a couple guys that kind of go away from what your guardrails are, it's not like the guy's Super Bowl. He's 24 years old.
Yeah.
And he's a mature guy that can play right now. So, if you bring a guy who's 22 and it takes a couple years before he gets on the field, I don't think Peyton Wilson's the guy who's going to take very long to get on the field. He's that good.
Yeah, mature player. Interesting. All right, Lance, let's get to away from the draft and have a look at this Browns team pre-draft and look at the strongest and weakest position groups on this team. So for you, we're looking, lots can change in the draft. Browns don't have that many picks, but lots can change. But as it stands right now, the strongest position group on this Browns team is what?
Defensive line. I think with Zadarius Smith, Hurst, Shelby Harris resigning, you got Quentin Jeffrin, who's a specialist, a third down specialist. You got Alex Wright, who made tremendous strides last year in terms of being inside, being able to play that 3 technique and nickel, and being outside. So you got some flexible parts there. You have the best defensive end in football. Zadarius Smith, who is a great compliment. I just think that you have a really deep position group that can do a lot of different things versus a lot of different schemes. Versus pass run, it's a really, really, you got Dalvin Thompson inside to anchor things. So you have a group that's really, really talented. They lost a couple guys in free agency, but I think Siaki Ika is a guy who's going to take a step forward. But I also don't mind taking Sweat, because Sweat gives you another body in there who's really mobile with great foot movement. So I think without question, I think the safeties are strong. I think some other positions are strong. The good thing is I don't think any positions are super weak, but that defensive line, to me, defensive line is what wins you championships. And I think the Browns have a really good defensive line.
And it was certainly one of the biggest strengths last year in many categories. Number 1 ranked defense, read the defensive player of the year, gave Schwartz the assistant coach of the year. So it makes sense for me. And look, I'm not going to disagree with you on the defensive line being phenomenal, but what really just stood out for me was the secondary, and I'll sub it into the safety. I think you take the secondary maybe as a whole, but that safety group. And what really did it for me, Lance, was the emergence of Ronnie Hickman and DeAnthony Bell. Like, that's the type of player with this contract of Deshaun Watson you have to find. An undrafted rookie from Ohio State, Hickman comes in and plays like that with Delpit, who was playing lights out up until he signed that extension. Then the next game he got hurt. McLeod is the nice veteran. Thornhill, like you said. Bell is a bit of a mix and match guy. And then you mix in, of course, all the corners. I think this is an area where you have the ability to have that push up front. You're going to have the coverage and the aggressiveness that can send blitz, like we've seen with Delpit, up the middle. And now you have that defense. It's like, wow, the quarterback is not going to see anything open, and you got that defensive line. That's a great mix.
Well, yeah, and you have, one of the things I love about Schwartz is the simulated pressure. So the Browns can cover with 7 guys, still bring 4, but show 6. But the only way you can show 6 is if those guys are able to get out in coverage, show at the line of scrimmage, get out in coverage, and find guys they need to cover backs or tight ends. And they have those second level guys to do that. Once you move up, I'm with you. There's a safety position. That's the one guy deep. And the Browns have a number of guys that can do that. That second level guy are all guys who are athletes. Yeah. Delpit and Hicks and JOK. Those guys all have to run, all have to cover, all have to blitz. And I think the Browns are. I think, you could have a serious discussion that the secondary is their strongest. But what I think you just said it right. The complement, the secondary is going to be much better because of the pass rush, and the pass rush is going to be much better because of the coverage. So they're going to marry very, very well together.
Yeah, and speaking of strength, I wanted to give a shout out to our guys at Triller TV, formerly Fight TV. Lance, the strength of schedule when it comes to the fight game is phenomenal with these guys. They got All Elite Wrestling Dynasty pay-per-view coming out on Sunday, April 21st. That's in the U.S. and Canada and international markets, but also Bare Knuckle Fighting Championship, World Sumo Championship, boxing from Thailand and all over, different indie wrestling. It's terrific. They got the Triller TV Plus subscription. Give it a look if you haven't checked it out. Because if you're a fight fan, and if a lot of football fans I know are fight fans, you want to check out Triller TV on social at Fight TV. And remember that AEW pay-per-view Dynasty is April 21st. So Lance, let's look at the weakest point and weakest position group on this Browns team. Like you said, it's really built around this team being ready to win right now. So I don't know if there's anything too glaring, but what's the weakest to you?
Well, when they brought in Adeniji, initially I thought it was tackle. I think Adeniji adds some stability there. I've broken him down with 3 different teams now. He's a good fit. He's a good backup. He can play both right and left tackle. Depending on what Conklin does coming back, I really like Conklin. I think Jed Wills is a special athlete. I'm high on Wills. He has not played to his expectations, but I love big guys that can move their feet. And then obviously DeJuan Jones is the guy who I think has a chance to be an all-pro for a long time.
Amazing.
But if you ask me with losses, I think the position after Njoku, their biggest weakness is backup tight end right now. Aikens didn't kind of pan out. Harrison Bryant has moved on. I think they got to think about maybe addressing that with either a draft pick or once again going back to if they drafted D lineman, now you have some trade bait, things like that. So I think the tight end depth, because the Browns will still go a ton of 12 and 13 personnel just because that's who Kevin Stefanski is. I think either Aikens needs to get going because he was a little bit off, maybe new site last year, new team, or they have to address that. And there's some pretty good tight ends, that I think that's Founder Sanders, the kid from Texas, is really good. There's a kid out of TCU I really like. They might have to address that with the draft. Yeah,
because outside of Njoku, they brought in Giovanni Ricci, but he's a glorified offensive lineman fullback. Correct. He's not catching a ball. So yeah, I think it'll be interesting to see, because we still don't know who's calling plays. Is it Ken Dorsey? Is it Stefanski? We know it's going to be a collaboration. How much is tight end going to be used? That'll be really interesting. I'm with you on the tight end. That was very close to me. For me, it's got to be the quarterback room. And Lance, I hope no one hopes I'm wrong more than me. Okay, please. Like Deshaun Watson, if Deshaun Watson stays healthy and plays how he can, like, we're legit talking Super Bowl. If he plays how he did in the second half of that Ravens game when he got hurt, 14 for 14, we're talking Super Bowl for the Browns. But we have to see it. There's lots of ifs. There's faith you can have, but this is the year we have to see it. And my issue is, if something happens to him, Jameis Winston, great soundbite, lots of charisma. But boy, man, we've seen him play the last few years, time to time, and he just hasn't looked that great. And Tyler Huntley, that's good. You got him from Baltimore. Could be a scout guy, but the strategy on him is to make him throw the ball. He's not a good passer of the football. He can run and get you some yards, and DTR, that hip apparently is still bugging him. What do you think of this quarterback room overall?
Well, Jameis Winston in 19 was dynamic. Unfortunately, he was dynamic in many ways. He 30-plus interceptions, 30 best quarterback. So it's kind of all or nothing. He throws a very good vertical ball. I actually think with the scheme, depending on what they do, I think Tyler Huntley is actually has a chance to be the backup. And what I mean by that is that he does not throw the vertical ball as well as Jameis Winston. No. And I think the Browns want to get to that. But Tyler Huntley is very smart, and he throws that intermediate game very, very well. And the intermediate game is much more important as a quarterback if you're a backup than the vertical game. You got to be able to keep the sticks moving. He can also keep the sticks moving with his feet. He does a really good job with his feet. He can add some stuff in the plus one run game where he's the runner and the tailback is now the fullback. You got the zone read, you got the power read, you got all the read game as well. I do think it's concern with Watson bringing in Huntley and Jameson. You're concerned, is he healthy? Well, I think he will be healthy, but I think Tyler Huntley, to me, is a really, really, really good backup. Jameis Winston has shown it, but if you're a backup, your key is you got to move the sticks and protect the football. And Jameis Winston has been unable to protect the football, and that will kill the Browns if he has to play. So if he comes in and you get the good Jameis, Jameis is, one thing people don't understand about Jameis is he's highly intellectual. He understands the game of football. He can make all the throws. And in fact, what ends up happening, in my opinion, he relies too much on that arm. In terms of he understands that the corner might get there, but he believes in his arm strength. So he's just got to protect the football. He's got to be a good teammate. He's got to help Watson. I think Huntley's a great backup. I think they went out and addressed it, but there are a lot of question marks in terms of what do you get after Deshaun Watson and what do you get with Watson right now? And
that's it.
I'm a huge proponent that I think Deshaun Watson is going to be a high level player. You don't that 220 film. 2020 is some of the best film I've ever watched at the quarterback position. And I'm not saying he'll get back to that, or he doesn't need to, though, because he's got a lot around him. And he just got to be the guy who extends plays, the guys that improvises, be consistent, protect the football. There's a lot of really good football players around him. And I think the Browns will be fine if he just plays at a high level in terms of his improvising. And but after Watson, and even with Watson, I think it's fair to say that's a position that you have to see before you can make some decisions.
Fully believe. Yeah,
exactly.
The thing is, too, Lance, it's staying on the field. I fully believe if Watson could get in a groove, he can get back to whatever level you want to say to be good enough to carry the Browns deep into the playoffs. We've seen it whenever he was able to get his rhythm. I was at the Tennessee game in that second half. Holy cow! Some of these, I can still picture the one to Jerome Ford and Amari Cooper in my mind's eye. Remarkable. And then that second half of the Baltimore game. But there's so many interruptions. He's dinged up. He's this. You got to stay. And let's hope that Ken Dorsey can train Deshaun Watson to not take away the legs, because you still want to have that, but do it smartly. He mentioned, he's like, look, if it's first down, slide, get out of bounds. If you need the third down, you got to then take the risk. But try to limit that. That's my problem with him.
Well, and then you have Huntley. So there's my classic example. There's Huntley. So now you have your quarterback. If you want to get in the red zone, if you want a third down situation, if you want to run that quarterback, because remember, when you run that quarterback, not with the fake with the tailback, but actually use him as the tailback and use the tailback as the fullback. Now you have a numbers advantage, especially in the red zone and man coverage. So there's certain things they can do with Huntley that I think he should do instead of Watson. Watson's got to protect himself. There's a lot of money involved. There's a lot of offense involved in what he's doing, and the whole organization is counting on him playing at a high level. When you break down all these films and the fact that they don't pick to the second round for a number of years now, they missed out on a lot of guys. So he's got to play at the level that he was at 2020, or this trade will not be thought of very highly.
This is the last chance to make it work, really. It's going to be the surrounding pieces are there. Lance, this is always fun, man. Thank you so much. Tell people where they can find you, read your work, and all that.
Both on Instagram and X, it's just Lance Reisland, LanceReisland. Just my name. Everything's on either, like I said, either Instagram or X. Just working on depth at each position here, getting ready for the draft. So check it out.
Boy, cannot wait. Well, thank you so much, my friend. Let's do it again soon.
As always, thanks for having me.
All right, there he is, Lance Reisland from Cleveland.com, and a longtime football coach in the Cleveland area. Love breaking down that film. Look, I still want a wide receiver, okay? However, Lance kind of made me think, okay, if it's not a receiver you want, or there's a run, or it's not the guy Barry wants, and you have one of those three players he mentioned, I wouldn't be upset about it. Before this chat, I might be like, what the heck are you doing? Taking, just like it was for Martin Emerson. Now, with those three players, Tavondre Sweat, Tyler Nubin, especially that Peyton Wilson, 6'4", 230. Oh, boy. I want either him, if I can't have a receiver, which I do want, I want either Peyton Wilson or Tavondre Sweat, the D tackle, 6'4", 366, who can move like that. Come on, man. Ridiculous. I would take those guys too. Who do you want, though? Let me know. Mention in the comments. Click notifications. Subscribe. Let me know, who do you want the Browns to take? Is it one of the guys that Lance talked about? Is it a receiver? Is it somebody else? You can let us know on social, too, on X, Twitter, at AndyMC81, at SickPodBrowns. Like and follow us there. Let us know. Instagram and TikTok, at AndyMCSports. So there you go. Draft creeping up, folks. Just a couple weeks away. So keep in touch. Let us know. We'll be back with a show next week. Get us keep getting ready for the draft and more Brown storylines as things develop in the always eventful NFL offseason. Thanks to Lance Reisland. Thanks to Shane, Jimmy, and the sick crew. I'm Andy McNamara. And as always, go Browns!
And that's a wrap. Hope you don't miss us too much until next time. Follow the Sick Podcast with Andy McNamara on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, Google Play, and Apple Podcasts.